What's up, guys? Maidenslave here, and today we talk about Hell Bent for Leather, and that's why I have these glasses on, because it's like the front cover. And that's actually the first thing I want to talk about, is the title of this album. This album's a little bit different. It's different. It's special. It's not retarded. It's just different. Well, originally this album was titled Killing Machine, which many of you probably still know it as, because as far as I know, it came out first in the UK and in Europe, I believe, as Killing Machine, and that's actually another song on the album. But when they brought it over to America, the management here said, no, you're not going to call it that, because Judas Priest were actually considered to be kind of dangerous, you know, and I didn't really mention this, but on the Stained Class album, they got some criticism, well, not criticism, but they got actually in some trouble, you know. Some kid committed suicide, and of course his parents tried to blame it on a rock band, and he happened to be listening to Stained Class, so I didn't really want to mention that because, you know, I feel like the more people talk about that shit, the more attention it's given. I don't think it's important, but yeah, that's why their management here said, you're not going to call your album Killing Machine, you should call it Hell Bent for Leather. That sounds a lot better. And that actually sounds a lot better to me anyways. For me, I feel like it's a much stronger title track. It's a much stronger song. There's a lot more kind of concept there. And it goes a whole lot better with the actual album cover. I mean, this is, you can see on the front, you know, the leather and studs that Judas Priest actually kind of pioneered, really, Rob Halford himself, with, you know, the whole leather thing. And now they're so synonymous with it. I mean, you can't argue that, you know, the guy on the front cover is the killing machine. He's the assassin. He's the, you know, the kind of the hired person to kill somebody. But, you know, I guess it can go with that. But that is one of the songs on the album. But for me, Hell Bent for Leather, stronger song, stronger title track, and it goes a whole lot more with the album cover. So, you know, yeah, let's talk about the album then, if you'll just excuse me. There we go. Alright. So yeah, this album is their last major album in the 1970s, and it definitely sounds like an album that came out in the late 70s. It's also Les Binks' last album, studio album he did, Unleash in the East. But this is his last album, and yeah, he had a great performance. The main thing that you can actually say about Hell Bent for Leather before we get into the songs is it's much more of the times. It's much more stripped down, commercial friendly. It's just kind of a fun album. It's not bad. It's just kind of a party album. It sounds more of the times. You know, you don't take it as seriously as you would Stained Class or Sin After Sin. And I think that they wanted to kind of break out a little bit and have a little bit of fun, which they did a lot in the 80s. And in a lot of ways, this album foreshadows kind of the path that they would go down after this. To me, this is a very transitional album because there is points in this album where it sounds very much like their 70s stuff, and there's a lot of points in this album, a lot of songs that sound like future music that they would be doing in the 80s, and this kind of commercialism progressed all the way up to Turbo, and then they kind of took a different turn after that, but we'll get there when we get there. So yeah, this album overall, the production is probably the best that they've had at this point. It just feels a lot heavier, a lot thicker. The guitar sounds big, the bass sounds big, the drum sounds really big. Just a really great sounding album, and I do like the cover, by the way. For this time, it was kind of just like, finally they came out with the leather and studs, because they had been doing it for a little while on their shows, so that was cool. First song, Delivering the Goods, and this is actually a great song to start off the album, and it really gives you a great taste for what you're going to be getting. I mean, it just sounds like a fun song. It sounds like, you know, just this album is kind of a perfect album to put on at maybe a party around this time in the 70s, or it's really, really great driving music, and Judas Priest has a lot of good music for this kind of setting. Just kind of a funner feel, you know, less serious. And Delivering the Goods is a great way to start out the album. I really like the song a lot. Next song is Rock Forever, and this is a really cool song, and it has some really, really fantastic, for the time, double bass drum features in there. A lot of heavy drums all over the place. But it is a really, really great song. It sounds, it kind of sounds a little bit like a Kiss song, except Rob Halford is a way better singer than anybody in Kiss. So yeah, it's a pretty good song. Next song is Evening Star, and this is one of the weaker songs on the album. And this actually does foreshadow a lot of the stuff that they would do in the 80s, because it's actually, to me, a very cheesy song. It's kind of just like Judas Priest. For the most part, you take them seriously. They come out with serious shit. They're a fucking heavy motherfucking band. They're dark. They're deep. But every once in a while, throughout their discography, they'll come out with a song that sounds like they didn't even write it. It just sounds like they performed it. And Evening Star is definitely one of the first of these types of songs. Next song, Hellbent for Leather, the title track, what I consider the title track. Very, very, very good song. This song completely foreshadows what they would do in the 80s. It sounds very, very akin to something like Breaking the Law. Just a great song. Classic Judas Priest song right there. Next song is Take on the World, and this is my least favorite song on the entire album, and this completely foreshadows what they would do later on. In fact, in many ways it sounds very similar to Defenders of the Faith, in that it's kind of like an anthem, like a call together, call on arms, kind of just a beat driving the entire time with a big choir, Take on the World. And I'm not a big fan of these types of songs at all, especially when a heavy metal band does them. Definitely do not like Take on the World. Next song is Burning Up. And this is a pretty okay song. And it sounds very, 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 very of the times. It sounds very 70s. It even has kind of a disco beat in there. Other than that, though, it's a pretty good song. The next song is Green Monalish with a two-pronged crown. That's a say that fucking 10 times fast. This is a classic Judas Priest song, but very similar to Better By You, Better Than Me. This is actually I was actually surprised that this is a cover by Fleetwood Mac, and it is a very, very good cover. Once again, excellent song, excellent cover choice for this album. It fits in perfectly, and it's one of their best songs, period. I mean, it's very melodic, and it's a great song. Definitely one of the strongest moments on this album. Next song is Killing Machine, and very similar to Burning Up, maybe even more so. It sounds very 70s, very disco, but it is a very good song. It's one of their classic songs. It's a little bit weaker than Hellbent for Leather for me. That's why I prefer Hellbent for Leather as the title. But it is a pretty good song and has a cool concept too. Next song is Runnin' Wild, and this is probably the heaviest, most metal song on the album. The rest of this album is very kind of hard rock, easy listen, kind of radio friendly stuff. Next song is Before the Dawn, and this is kind of the ballad, the slow paced song on the album. And it actually is a very beautiful ballad. However, I feel like it was too short, like they didn't finish it. Like it sounds like the beginning of an excellent ballad that they would do, like Beyond the Realms of Death, but it just feels like it's not finished, and that was the only problem I had with that song. Last song, Evil Fantasies, and this song is pretty much garbage. Terrible way to end this album. The whole song just kind of feels like it's dragging along. It's very, very slow pace. I didn't like the pace, and I really didn't like the way that Rob Halford sung for most of this song. He kind of used this nasty vibrato, and he does that sometimes, and I really don't like it. I mean, this is a very weak song, and it is a terrible song to end the album on. I think they probably should have ended on Running Wild. So, Hellbent for Leather for me is a very kind of mixed bag. It just kind of seems to be like it has a lot of classics on it. It has a very cool sound, but there's a lot of, not so good songs on this album. There's a lot of weaker songs, and to me, for the first time since their debut album, it feels like Priest didn't, at least with the music, it didn't bring anything to the table of metal. They didn't change anything. They didn't do anything revolutionary. They just kind of did what was happening at the time. I understand, before you guys get on me about this, I understand the whole leather and image and the whole metal thing was kind of born with, but that was the way they looked. That wasn't the music. The music on this album for me is one of their weaker albums, to be honest with you. One of their weaker albums from the 70s. They came out with some great albums in the 70s. So I'm going to give Hellbent for Leather / Killing Machine, if that's what you prefer. A 7 out of 10. So later, guys.